It's time to talk about TreasureDAO, how they're flipping the script by starting where others finish.
I know your parents probably told you magic isn't real, but I'm here to tell you that it's an ERC20 token, okay? And TreasureDAO is a project you need to know about, all right? So if you're into DeFi or GameFi at all, TreasureDAO is really taking such a unique approach to solving some of the problems, and I personally think they're onto something. So what are they doing different, and what are the problems that they've identified with current GameFi and DeFi that they're trying to solve? Well, one, the obvious problem with a lot of DeFi protocols, why most of them fail, is just at the end of the day, low liquidity. If you have low liquidity, then your entire ecosystem just kind of falls apart. If I'm earning yield on some token or earning some other asset in a game, and there's no ability for me to exchange that for any other asset or make any kind of trade, then there's no liquidity and your economy doesn't exist, right? So liquidity is the main thing to achieve, but it's not easy at all to achieve that in perpetuity. And a lot of projects are finding this out. Even when they have a good team, even if they have a good game, sometimes it falls apart because a game can die over the course of time. And this is not even to mention if the team is just straight up garbage, then yeah, the whole protocol fails. So you have bad liquidity, you have bad teams, and you sometimes just have bad games. And even when you have good of all three of these, sometimes it's not sustainable. So what do we have to do here? Well, Treasure has a completely unique take on it. They basically think that creating a sustainable metaverse isn't about having cool graphics or a really high octane gameplay. The key is to have stories that the community wants to engage with, that are consistent and that can grow and scale over time, right? So they're really starting with the lore aspect of it and that classic like video game style, like dungeon, trying to get treasure, trying to get magic, right? So they believe that financial primitives, which in this case are treasure, which is their NFTs, and magic, which is their ERC20 token, they are just designing to allow for a good mechanism of social coordination, essentially. They believe that at the end of the day, financial primitives are just tools for social coordination. So that's what they're building. They're building a community that can coordinate really well together and build these narratives out and create a consistent metaverse that people will want to engage with. They kind of flip the problem on its head. Instead of starting with trying to start with high liquidity by incentivizing people to just like buy into the ecosystem and tell them that you know they'll make more money in the future because of it, which as soon as that starts to not happen, the whole thing just falls apart. If you incentivize people to build narratives and to put effort and work into creating a vast metaverse that people want to engage with, then that work is what gives the metaverse itself value, which can then be leveraged into additional value that comes in the form of these financial primitives. So how does this actually look? Well, TreasureDAO itself, it is pretty abstract if you're just looking at treasure. So I'm gonna make another video and go into one of the projects that's building using magic and using Treasure's ecosystem. But for now, let's just look at some high-level examples of kind of like how we can maybe think about this to understand it. So let's take a look at like floods in real life, right? So we have homes and their assets, and if they get flooded, then you know the value of that asset diminishes incredibly, right? And we don't want to expose individuals to that level of risk, so we have insurance. Well, one of TreasureDAO's ideas is, what if we looked at low liquidity as like bad weather events that are outside of your control but can be overcome through, you know, social coordination, like insurance, right? So really build low liquidity and the potential for it into the narrative of the universe and allow the players to solve the problem. Now, I think this is genius because, again, an engineer can sit behind a computer and code a smart contract trying to figure out the precise way to, you know, make liquidity, you know, high in these cases, in this niche case. But really, at the end of the day, the idea is to let those solutions bubble up from the community. And you got to get that community there first by having engaging storytelling and narratives. So how are they incentivizing anybody to come and write a story for them? Well, essentially TreasureDAO, what they did is they basically made their blocks. They unlock if someone submits like good lore narratives that get accepted into the ecosystem, right? So if someone builds a good story, and then the DAO accepts it, they will get magic emitted. And if someone else comes and builds a game or an NFT project on top of that lore, well, they'll get even more rewards. So really, this is the incentive structure and how they plan on building out the universe. Just decentralize it and allow others to come in and solve those problems for you. Now, one thing that they did that was extremely important, which, you know, any, I think, good game project will need to strive to do that at this point. Even if you don't care about it for the egalitarian reasons, it's important to have a fair launch that has a good distribution of the token assets, because it's not good for an ecosystem or an economy for, you know, most of the wealth and the assets to be held by a few. It's just unsustainable that way. So Treasure's very focused on making sure that it's an accessible ecosystem going well into the future, and that it can scale, because the team is not attempting to build out the entire gaming metaverse and narrative itself. It's allowing others to come in, and they believe that decentralizing that process will actually allow them to scale to very large amounts. And then the more lore and stories and games that get built using Treasure and Magic, the more they all strengthen each other. I think they're going to be right. So I'll leave you with this. So just imagine that you're in a Skyrim MMORPG and all the food prices are really high because the farming yields have been down because there's been low liquidity. Well, as players add more magic to that, or as, you know, some brave warrior goes into the cave of Illyria and slays the dragon of Garzagar, right? And that dragon drops a bunch of magic and it gets staked. Well, maybe the weather improves and it's sunny every day. Get your ice cream cone.